Welcome to ChiroSphere, where we talk about all things chiropractic and some things, well, not so chiropractic. I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth, your host for ChiroSphere and CEO of ChiroHealth USA, the network that works for chiropractic. Today on ChiroSphere, we're joined by David Testone, an educator and healthcare benefits expert with more than 30 years of experience spanning education, insurance, and medical claims advocacy. David is an adjunct professor at Berkeley College and the University of Bridgeport, where he teaches business communications, public speaking, and writing and research. In addition to his academic career, David is the owner of Data Claim Services, a medical benefits recovery firm where he helps individuals and providers navigate denied claims, appeals, benefit buyouts, and complex insurance challenges. Today, we're excited to tap into David's unique blend of communication expertise and real-world claims experience and what it means for providers who want to advocate more effectively for themselves and their patients. Well, welcome, David.
Thank you, doctor, for having me.
You bet. Everybody doesn't know, but I'll share it with them. We had this scheduled for last week, and as the saying goes, Houston, we have a problem. Well, we got our tech folks involved, and here we are. So thanks for being patient with us and getting that cleaned up. Well, as I was saying before we went live, I wish I'd known you 10 plus years ago. I was in a wonderful situation. I was partners on the campus of a spine center, literally with neurosurgery, orthopedic, you name it. If it had to do with spine care, it was there. And of course, being in that setting, those guys saw an awful lot of federal workers' comp. I mean, it was, just a major part of business. And they were kind enough to refer a number of cases that they had to me. And, it wasn't my first day at the rodeo, but I could not crack the federal workers' comp code or whatever that is. And it was frustrating to have access to patients, but no access to benefits or pay. And it didn't seem to matter, what I did. So out of frustration, I probably did what a lot of docs do, which is to heck with it. I'm not going to see them anymore.
Mhm.
And I understand there's a better way, David.
There is a better way. And what's interesting, I'll give you a brief background how I got involved in it, is that I was doing consulting work for a law firm in New York, and they asked me to see a chiropractor in Staten Island. I went out to see him, and I noticed he had a utility shed next to his office. So I asked him, just off the record, I said, what's in the utility shed? Snowplow, shovels? He said, no, all of my federal workers' comp bills.
Yeah.
We opened the shed, and from the dirt on the floor to the ceiling, those were bills that were not paid. And I asked him, I said, can I take a look at a few? I did. I dove into the Department of Labor's website, studied their manual, and there's a manual on that site. I studied the manual, and within approximately, I'd say 30 days, we were able to recover close to $15,000. Now, this was 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I got more and more involved in it. I started talking to a few chiropractic meetings in New York. I had one gentleman say to me, "You can't do what you say you're doing it." I said, "Okay, uh, for you, uh, I'm going to be your partner. How's that sound? If I can recover money for you, my normal percentage for you would be 50-50. How's that sound?" And to be honest with you, he's been a client since that time to this day.
Proof in the
And
pudding.
it's amazing. But getting back to the situation, the Department of Labor, they themselves come out and say that they pay almost 96% of their bills within 15 business days. That is a
Unheard
lot
of.
more than we do. When we do billing, the bills are processed not within 15 business days, within 10 business days. And they say 98% of the bills are completed within 28 days. And they say that authorizations are approved within 3 business days. Now, what I find interesting to the most and what the Department of Labor does, they are a separate entity from Medicare in the U.S. government. They have their own billing protocol. They have their own fee schedule, which is very important. And to emphasize that, they themselves, this is the U.S. Department of Labor, profess to be 56% higher than Medicare. And I can attest to that.
Yeah, I actually did some preliminary research on this, and the numbers that I read, it was between 47 and 50 some odd percent, depending on
That's
where you
right.
live in the country. And I know docs are the things I've heard about. Oh, I don't want to fool with that. They only follow the Medicare guidelines, and so right out of the gate, let's address it. Is that a myth or a fact? Will they cover exams or X-rays or therapy or rehab for a chiropractor?
That's interesting too. Um, when I initially became involved in this, they would not accept a chiropractor's plan of treatment. They had to have a script from the primary care physician and the medical doctor. Until recently, approximately 2 years ago, they started accepting chiropractors' plans and the
Directly.
plan quickly. And what they did was, and I had to basically instruct the chiropractors that I'm dealing with, listen, they don't want soap notes. I'm going to show you, and I have a template where I've given them a paragraph. That's all they want. A paragraph as to what parts of the body you're going to treat, what types of treatment protocols you're going to do, for how long you're going to do it. And I always tell them, conclude the paragraph with prognosis undetermined. And I emphasize to them, do not indicate the diagnosis codes or the procedure codes. Why is that important? Because once you're credentialed as a medical provider with the U.S. Department of Labor, you can check on your provider portal just by indicating the patient's name and date of birth, the case approved, and I'm going to emphasize that, the case approved diagnosis codes and the case approved procedure codes. So when you submit a bill, you're assured that that bill has the proper coding, and you're assured if you need and have obtained authorization or treatment, that bill is going to be paid. And you can check as soon as you initiate the bill, where it will indicate on the portal, process for payment right away. So we tell chiropractors, I know what you're doing. I've seen your HICPA forms, but doctor, this is the case approved diagnosis. This is the case approved procedure codes. That is what we use. That is what you should use.
So are case approved diagnostic codes, are you saying that those are issued by the department
That's
and not by
correct.
the chiropractor? So if I send in my one paragraph, I'm assuming to request treatment, will they come back and say you can bill these CPT codes, these ICD-9 codes, or kind of walk me through that? That's a little
What happens?
perplexing.
I'll go through the example. A patient will come in, and I've asked the chiropractor before, when you do your demographic, ask the patient if the patient's been assigned a case file number from the Department of Labor. If not, that patient has to report to his or her supervisor to get the accident report into Washington. Now, if that's been done and they don't know their case file number, then we go into the portal, use the date of birth, use their name, and we will receive, if it's on file, the case file number. Once we get the case file number, the portal allows you to put the case file number in, the date of service, and will provide you with the accepted conditions for that case file by chosen and indicated by the Department of Labor, not by the Chiro.
It's interesting.
Then what you do is you go into the portal again, utilizing the case file number, and you again question or put in the case file number, put in the date of service, and ask for the procedures that are in fact approved for that case. Now, in my experience, I have Chiros. I know for I know for sure that the Department of Labor will not accept from a Chiro procedure code 98940. So they won't accept that for Chiros. That's a given. So we say to the Chiro, here are a list of standard procedures that the Department of Labor approves for chiropractic treatment. And there's approximately 7 of them. So I asked the doctor, okay, I will put those 7 procedures, see if they're authorized for that case file. If they are, we tell the Chiro, okay, these are the procedures that they have in fact stated that would be authorized if you're performing them. The Chiro will look at those procedures, will say to me, okay, I will do, we're performing 97110. We're performing 97116. We're performing 97035. Can you get that authorized? And we take the plan, the paragraph that the Chiro has in fact written, we submit it as an authorization request. It takes about 3 days and we get it approved. Now, here's the other important factor with regards to authorization requests that's unique to the U.S. Department of Labor. We can obtain authorization of treatment 6 months in advance with that paragraph and with those case approved diagnoses and procedure codes. I've got Chiros right now that are approved for treatment for their patients to the end of March. And this is January 29th. So once that's done, once the Chiro is informed that a billing template has been set up with the approved diagnosis code, with the approved procedure codes, the only thing that has to be done is to submit the bill. The U.S. Department of Labor says themselves that they're non-adversarial. And I agree with them because none of the chiropractors that I deal with have ever had to write scripts or reports for long-term disability. They don't want that. They don't want to see that. That one paragraph works. And I thank God because we were chasing medical providers who were trying to get them to write those plans of treatment. Now that there's a template that we've come up with that works, it's smooth. It's a good operation. Now, I also tell chiropractors, now listen, um, you can't be excessive when you're talking about how many procedures you do, because that's a red flag. I mean, the Department of Labor, the analysts there, yes, they're
Still got to be medically necessary care.
got to be medically necessary. And if you're not doing it, because they'll say to me, what do we have to do? And I say to them, any procedure codes you're putting down for that date of service, that had better be substantiated in your office notes. Make sure it is. And we've had no problems since that time. We've had situations where, and of course, the Department of Labor, like any insurer, will come out and say maximum amount of benefits have been paid. The case is closed. And that's fine. That's fine. But we've got medical providers that have been treating patients, and that's what the difference between the Department of Labor and, let's say, state workers' comp agencies, where state workers' comp agencies have restricted number of days or treatment dates for chiropractors, not the Department of Labor. We've
Right.
got medical providers who've been treating patients for 5, 7, 10 years, and there's been no independent medical exam. The only thing they would require, like I said, once, like for example, once the authorization ends in March that we have for a few, we tell the Chiro, okay, time to write a new script. Put the date on it. Put the same situation that you're doing. If you're doing anything extra, include it. Remember, do not indicate your procedure or diagnosis codes, simply the parts of the body you're treating and how you're treating.
That is mind-boggling to hear that it works that different or that much differently than the regular third payer system. Um, so I tend to dig in the weeds a little bit because I really find this topic very interesting, especially since I could have had a shed full of claims. So
Well, let me add one other point that'll get your interest. During my research, I noticed on the provider portal, under online billing, online resources, it said bill adjustment. So I contacted the Department of Labor, and they have their fee schedule there too. It goes by zip code. And I contacted them and I said, could you tell me what bill adjustment means? And I ended up talking to a very knowledgeable and very, very cooperative analyst who said to me, well, you know that we publish our fee schedules almost going back 10 years. I said, are you trying to tell me that I can adjust a previously paid bill, underpaid bill, up to 10 years? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what if the Cairo used the Medicare fee schedule? Can I go in and I can change that particular fee schedule to the appropriate U.S. Department of Labor fee schedule? She said, you can do that immediately. We,
that's my yeah. I want to speak to that. One of my former hats, I jokingly tell people I'm a recovering medical compliance specialist, and so when I hear some of these things, it's like red flag, red flag. So I want to make sure that doctors are really, really clear on this point. What, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, what you're saying is if I have billed out claims and I discover that I did not bill out what was the allowable to workers' comp, that I can go back and correct that claim. That's one scenario. What a doctor cannot do is if his normal fee for a given procedure is $50, that's his actual fee. When he sees a federal workers' comp, you cannot just raise your fee because of that claim. That is billing fraud versus a corrected billing. Distinctly different mechanisms. So I don't want doctors to get in trouble because I have seen that happen. We've had audits where a doctor's normal fee for a visit might be $95. Their workers' comp and they're billing out $225, and they only do it on that claim, and that is absolute. That falls under the fraud, waste, and abuse, and they will absolutely come after you for that. But what David's talking about, again, once just to clarify, is he is correcting the billing up to what workers' comp allowed, as
correct.
long as the doctor's fee schedule is at that level. But if your
Yes,
fee is lower than that, you can only bill the lower fee. Now, I didn't intend to get into a side commercial, but boy, I'm going to jump right in it because this is exactly why our company, Chiro Health USA, for those that don't know, it's a network with a discount medical plan where you have a contractual network agreement. And the beauty of using that model, my Maltese is joining us for the podcast. Sorry, David.
problem.
Um, but the beauty of the model is for so many years, we as chiropractors, we're trying to be good to our patients. And if in our practice, or let's say in our state, workers' comp pays $100 a visit, and we've got cash patients, we think, well, wow, they can only afford 45 or 50, then we have a tendency to put our fee lower toward what the cash patient can afford. And most of the time, they don't make up the majority of your practice. And more importantly, every time you do that, you are leaving revenue on the table. So
Yes,
here's the hack. Doctors, you got to know what federal workers comp allows, what your state comp allows. If you've got PI that has a set fee, you got to know that number. And I'm going to ask you a simple question. Why in the hell would you be paid a dime less than at least what the insurance companies think you're worth? And so by using, believe it or not, you can't discount your way to success, but what you can do is you can use the model of the discount medical plan, which allows you to raise your fees, get paid well when that coverage is available, and now you've got a way to take care of the patient, your cash, underinsured, Medicare, non-covered service, and it's 100% compliant. We're regulated by the Department of Insurance, just like the Blues, Aetnas, and Cignas, except we don't do third-party administration and claims and UR and pre-cert and all of that. But th- this is the very reason that we recommend doctors use a DMPO so they can get paid better. And by the way, docs, if you don't follow the rules, guess what can happen? You can get reported to the attorney general like I did for having a dual fee schedule, charging more to PI than I did to cash. Yeah, that's a story for another day. I'm okay. I didn't look good in orange. They didn't try to put me in orange, but it was still a hard lesson to learn. But that is a critical thing that you just said. And I just want to make sure doctors have high clarity around that.
Well, it's interesting you should say about not looking good in orange. That's what I say to doctors when I make speaking engagements. And what's interesting about the U.S. Department of Labor fee schedule is that it's dependent upon zip codes. There's an 8-point algorithm that they use. One of the points of the algorithm is malpractice insurance, rental. I mean, it's they finally uncomplicated it by actually putting on the online services, one of the online services on the provider portal, the exact fee schedule. You can go in there and you could put in your zip code, you can put in the procedure code, put in the dates of service, and it will come out and right to the penny tell you what the Department of Labor is going to pay for that. Now, we saw my first example was I had a chiropractor in Brooklyn, New York, and he was saying, "Well, I'm very satisfied with what I'm getting from Medicare." And this was about, I'd say about 10, 15 years ago. And I said, "Well, really?" And I had his zip code. I was waiting for this. And I said, "Well, how much are you receiving for an office visit uh, from Medicare or your state workers' comp?" "Oh, I'm very pleased. I get between $35 and $40 per visit." I said, "Really?" I said, "Let me show you." And I had an overhead and I showed him, I utilized the portal and I put his zip code in and I showed him what an office visit was in his zip code. That's $35, $40 became 118. And he looked at me and I said, "That's not me. That's not me. I'm utilizing their information. That's what you should be charging anyone who works or who is a federal workers' comp claimant. That's what you're entitled to." And again, like I've told chiropractors at every one of my presentations, I respect your medical expertise. But doctors, there's two sides of a coin, and there's a business side. And what I believe, and I read through your mission statement, I believe that working with the U.S. Department of Labor definitely strengthens the practice financial stability.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I want to touch on one other thing that you said because again, um, I don't know if you've ever met Dr. Van Gogh, but there's a lot of Dr. Van Goghs around. They listen with one ear. So you had said that under the workers' comp system, you can get treatment for X amount of months, and then you made the statement that you've got some chiros that are treating patients that have been under care for years. I want to make this point also very, very clear. You can only continue to treat that patient if it's following the medical policy and there is medical necessity
That's
that's
right.
established. So what I don't want to hear or hear of or read from the DOJ in a few months is Dr. Foxworth got busted for treating a patient for 5 years, didn't meet medical necessity and having a problem. So keep in mind, while they may approve care for that long, if in fact there's reasonable improvement, if in fact the care is truly supportive and meaning they crash and burn if they don't get it, so be clear, in your notes, nothing worse than seeing a simple strain sprain diagnosis and the guy had 92 visits. The math doesn't math on that. So just recommend everything the patient needs, nothing that they don't. We preach document correctly, code correctly, bill correctly, collect correctly, and if you discount correctly, and always follow the medical policy guideline. Even though it may pay for all of that, it is 100% based on medical necessity. And I want to punctuate why this is important.
Yes.
There's a doctor that went to federal prison for, I wrote an article about this, when arrogance meets ignorance. And what happened in this situation is, if I'm trying to recall all the details, but imagine Blue Cross Blue Shield employees in a particular state have 24 visits. Well, his opinion was those patients are entitled to 24 visits, and he billed all of them for 24 visits, irrespective of medical necessity. He actually, from what I recall, tried to take the insurance company to court for not holding up their end of the bargain, and he got fried because nothing in that policy said you automatically get 24 visits. You get up to 24 visits, provided it meets our medical policy guidelines. So docs, you cannot get around that. Just because it covers 12 doesn't mean they get 12. They get what they need based on your workup. So, man, man, I could go on with you for hours. This is good stuff.
Well, I can attest to a situation that you're talking about. One of the chiros we deal with has been treating a patient for, well, the last 3 or 4 years, and we've submitted the plan of treatment that he wrote. We were getting the procedures approved until recently, when the Department of Labor, the case manager, sent us a letter and said, there's no medical necessity here. And we looked at it. Uh, you can appeal. As I told the Cairo, there's no need to. There's no need to. I mean, the diagnosis in and of itself, it doesn't lend to these multiple procedures that we did at the onset of the case. So accept the situation for what it is and move on. And
Yep.
that's what we've done.
Yeah, just steer clear of the mindset that, oh, a federal workers' comp, I just got an annuity.
No, no.
So I'm really interested about your path as well. You spent time as teaching, educating in the insurance world, um, medical benefits advocacy, which I think is absolutely huge. The average bear doesn't, or average chiropractor may or may not, but the public, they get denials on things all the time, and they don't have a hope or a prayer unless they've got somebody who's advocating for them. And I've had a friend 25 years ago that started doing this locally and turned into a quite nice business. So, are you working just with providers or with the public?
I'm working. What we did, we started out working with the public. Um, my background was that of a district claims representative for Mutual of Omaha Insurance Company. I was a teacher, and then I answered an ad in the New York Times, and they sent me to Omaha, Nebraska, for a year to train, and then they assigned me, of all places, Detroit, Michigan. I was the Mutual of Omaha, let's say, representative, district claims representative in Detroit. And I was the guy with the checkbook. I was the guy that would go in and either pay your claim or tell you why it wouldn't be paid. Or I was the guy who would go in to your attorney and say, okay, here's where we are. Where are you? And let's resolve this. Well, I did that for a couple of years out of Detroit, and they said, I think you got it. So almost every Friday, I would get a package at the airport with files, and every Monday, I'd be on a plane. I've worked in 35 states. I don't know how my wife and my daughters, found out, accepted this, but I've worked all over the country. I've seen situations that I can write a book about. You've got legitimate people out there with legitimate files and legitimate cases, but you've also got some interesting people. I mean, I had to track down somebody from Detroit to Coney Island, New York,
Yeah.
and
Is his name
it,
Gringo?
yeah, yeah. So I learned, but um, getting involved, that Cairo in Staten Island got me involved in this, and I said, I'm just going to focus on one thing and do it well, and that's what I've done. Um, I've looked at Kairos. In fact, this one Cairo, this gentleman is in his 80s now. He used to say to me all the time, "You realize we're the bottom feeders in the medical industry." I said, "Well, you know what? You're going to get what you're entitled to, and you're going to get what you're entitled to through the proper channels that the U.S. Department of Labor provides. If a postman, like I would ask these Kairos, if a postman walks into your office, who do you bill? Who do you bill? You're going to bill the state? The state's going to say no. You're going to bill Medicare? Medicare's going to say no. So what are you going to do? You're going to take either private pay or you're going to not treat the patient. And that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's another a point. And again, flashbacks from my training, the under federal workers comp guidelines and most every state guideline I've written, you can't collect cash from a workers
No,
comp patient. It is a state and federal benefit,
that's right.
and you try to skirt it, much like trying to skirt Medicare. That's a problem. So
Eh,
don't even go down that path. David, you talk about dealing with the insurance companies, and there's good and bad on both sides. But um, my good friend Jay Greenstein talks about insurance crimes and some of the things that happen on the other side to the provider side. And I'll just share a short story with you. You don't think it can happen to you. 4 years after I went into practice, my first wife was diagnosed with leukemia. Made it for 14 months, thank God for that long. Um, but during the process, when our claims were being filed, we got about halfway through that period and they stopped paying. And I ended up, long story variable, ended up in a lawsuit with the insurance company. The insurance company said acute promyelocytic leukemia was a pre-existing condition. By definition, it can't be
right.
because it's acute
Cute.
promyelocytic. I end up suing this insurance company for payment. And oh, by the way, guess what happens when you don't have insurance and you did have insurance and then you don't? You all of a sudden are, at lack of a better term, you're seen in general population. None of the things in place for uh, it's just not as healthy an environment. I'll put it that way. Unfortunately, we got a dual standard of treatment out there. But so not only did we get bumped from, I'll call the Hyatt to Motel 6, um, I sued them and lost. And the reason that I lost is not because it was pre-existing. The reason I lost is that the policy that I took out, I mean, I'm a young kid. I'm 30 something years old. I've just opened my practice. I bought what I thought was health insurance. And what I bought was a membership into a MIWA, which is a multiple employer welfare association, which meant that I was a member of that. And the court held that because I was a member of Employers Federated Trust, I couldn't sue myself. And there I am with $500,000 in medical bills. Those sons of bitches turned around and sued me for their legal fees. And, I ended up going bankrupt. I don't mind sharing that. I mean, what else was I going to do? Um, but I so feel for people that are they go through medical bankruptcy. That's what ended up happening with me. And docs, for your patients, for your family, number one, make damn sure what you're buying
That's right.
so you don't end up in that situation. And then number two, appeal the hell out of it because it if they know that every time they deny claims on Ray Foxworth in my clinic, I'm going to appeal it and I'm going to raise hell. After a period of time, guess what happens?
They pay.
They just pay the damn claim and go
That's
on
right.
because they know they screwed with the wrong guy.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not going to go away quietly. So just I share that personal story with you, not to spill my guts, but that's a real life situation that an awful lot of people are going through.
Yeah.
And so when you've got whether it's your patients or your practice and you got claims like that, You got to go at it. People don't realize that insurance companies are not in business to pay claims. They're in business to
Oh
collect
my God.
premiums. They're in business to collect premiums, make money on the premiums, and pay the claims out of that. So one day delayed times the billions of dollars of
That's
claims
right.
out there. Do the math, and you'll see why it happens that way.
I was informed of that when I worked for the insurance company. And I had a district manager that I mean, there were sales officers that I had to report to about the claims and the situation in the area that I was working in. And I had one honest gentleman who said, "Listen, we're not in the business to pay claims." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm out there being fair." I said, "I represent the company, and as far as I'm concerned, that claimant paid a good premium for that policy. And I'm there, and here I was using my education background. I was talking to those claimants at their kitchen tables, and I was telling them what I thought would be appropriate and how to handle it. I had one claimant, and I still have it here. He was so satisfied that I was honest with him and how he handled it. He got me tickets for the premiere of the movie The Rainmaker, and he sent me the book, The
Wow.
Rainmaker. And he said to me, "You're that guy." I said, "Well, I'm not the guy, sitting in I'm not on the insurance." He said, "No, no, no. You got to see this because that reminds me of you." He said, "You're an honest guy." I said, "Well, that's because everybody used to think that when I went out there and let's say I handled a case and made a settlement, that the company would pay me a percentage. They never did. I never got a thank you. They just sent me another batch of of files to go out
To
and
get
run.
back on the plane again.
Get back on the plane.
Yeah.
Get back on the plane.
Well, hang tight, everybody, while we take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Welcome back to our podcast with David Testone. We're talking about federal workers' comp and this is the part that's not so chiropractic. It's about real life stuff that's going on and happened. David, this is a rare situation because when we do these podcasts, my team puts together, your bio, and I've got questions that I'm following. And guess how many of my questions I've followed? None.
Figured that.
That's a sign of a great conversation.
That's good.
So you serve. I understand you serve as an expert witness in claims cases.
I did.
What should providers know about protecting themselves when disputes start to escalate? Because yeah, as I tell docs, if an auditor walks into your office, a Blue Cross auditor or a federal, you assume they got the goods on you. They don't just do drive by visits.
That's right. Because I
What's your
did that.
experience been with trying to help the doc stay out of trouble? What things are they doing that triggers someone in the audit department to say, "Hey, it's Monday morning. I got a file. I'm going to go see a guy."
Again, I'm just referring to my experiences with the U.S. Department of Labor with Fed Comp, and I tell the docs again, which I think is very important. You had better have office notes, test results, exams for every one of those procedures that we're billing for. Because if you don't have backup, I said, granted, the billing template doesn't ask for additional information, but I'm not going to submit a bill for you unless I know that you have substantial backup. And I mean office notes, I mean exams, x-rays, all of the above. Want it all. And that will help us if, in fact, an audit comes down, which thankfully hasn't happened in my, 20 years doing this, because I make sure before anything is submitted, it's reasonable, it's factual, and I tell the doc, now listen, I mean, don't tell me just because we've got X amount of office visits approved for that period that you're seeing these patients 2, 3, 4 times a week. I had one gentleman say he saw a patient on Christmas Day, and I called him and said, are you sure you saw him on 12/25?" "Oh, yes, Mr. Testone." I said, "Come on. Come on, be honest with me. I'm not going to submit that bill unless you provide me with a copy of the office notes, completed office record for that treatment date. He couldn't do it. And I said, you know what? Our association is done. Do it
It's
once.
amazing how somebody supposedly so smart can be so stupid.
Exactly.
I get a morning feed from the Department of Justice and several other resources out there about who's getting popped for what, and um, I guess that's my reading enjoyment. But it blows my mind, and I don't care if you're a chiropractor or a neurosurgeon. It took a certain amount of smarts to get through school, and
Exactly.
how someone can have so much knowledge and be so ignorant and blatant oftentimes,
Blatant. Right.
just blatant. It's just like, what are you thinking, dude? I mean, do you not know you're playing with fire? And it is just so not worth it. I've had, boy, it sounds like I'm in therapy today, David. I've had two friends that got in audits and they killed themselves because they knew what they were doing was wrong and they rolled the dice. One goes and buys a six pack and goes sit in his garage with his car running. And it is just so heartbreaking to see people go through that. And, y- people don't, I don't think enough of the profession, not just in chiropractic, but in general, realize how devastating an investigation and an audit like that can
Yes.
be. It disrupts your entire life, your entire practice. It takes a toll on the emotional toll, the physical toll, the financial toll. And it just doesn't make good sense to push the envelope, as some say,
Exactly.
tweak the coding because it'll land you in federal prison. We got a guy here in Georgia that happened to, and he goes around telling his story to other healthcare providers. Hey, I found out I got paid better if I used a neuromusculoskeletal code versus just a rehab code, or this code over that one. And you guys, you can't do that and sleep well at night. And it's
I tell,
just
I
stay away
tell,
from it. It's not worth it.
it's not. I tell the Cairo, listen, here's you're accredited. You have your own unique provider portal. Okay. Utilize it. And what we do is we have access to our clients' provider portals so we could talk to them about it and say, okay, you see where it says online services, correspondences? I know when you're getting a letter. You'll know when you're getting a letter. We review the correspondence that's there. And I try to tell them, it was like when I was teaching, and I was teaching expository writing. And I would say to my students, you know what I want you to do with this particular topic? I want you to kiss it. And they would look at me and say, what are you talking about, Professor? I said, I want you to keep it simple, stupid. I don't want 10 pages of words. I want 5 good paragraphs. You understand me? If you can do 5 good paragraphs, then I know you know the topic and you keep it tight. And I tell my Kairos, listen, when we bill, keep it simple. I'm not calling you stupid because, again, I respect your medical expertise. But damn it, sometimes these doctors,
You
I
don't know what you
mean,
know.
I shake my head. I keep asking myself, how do they stay in business? How? How could they possibly stay in business? I had one gentleman who was a very well known chiropractor. In fact, he was a chiropractor for the Olympic team, and he was actually going broke, and his office was full, and he had Fed comp. I went in there, I took a look at his bills, and I said to his office manager, what are you doing here? What are you doing with these things? Well, we don't know where to send them. I said, my God, you've got 2, 3 years worth of bills here. I took me a month, was able to reprocessed the bills for him, went to go see him because he said he wanted to see me. He's in it. We're in the waiting room. He comes up to me with patients around with his office manager and he says, are you Italian? I said, yes. Why? I want to hug you. You saved my practice. I said, you don't need to hug me. Just do the right thing. That's all you have to do. Follow the rules, follow the protocol. No more, no less.
Yeah.
Don't do anything
There's a saying, whatever is easy to do, like following the rules, is just as easy not to do.
not
And
to.
where I
I
think a
agree.
lot of, they go to a seminar or a weekend somewhere talking to a buddy. Oh man, I'm getting paid this on this,
Yeah,
getting paid up, and they go home and they tweak their coding, and just not okay. And hopefully everybody listening to the podcast knows that. David, what's the one piece of advice you would give to chiropractors who want to reduce denials, protect their revenues, and feel more confident in navigating the insurance system? Are there courses you recommend they take, or they're
well,
got to have some insight while they got their degree in chiropractic? We don't get our degree in business, and certainly don't get our
that's right.
degree in contracts. And what, where should they start? Because I see that posted a lot in some of the chat groups for chiropractors is, hey, I just opened my practice. Can anybody tell me how to bill this or bill that?
I get asked that question often. And what I tell the chiros when I've made presentations, especially the new chiros, the first thing I would do, and again, I'm focusing solely on U.S. Department of Labor, federal workers' comp. I would say to them, you should get credentialed immediately. And it's not as difficult as it seems. Like I know we helped someone get credentialed to Medicare. My God, I think we had to fill 30 or 40 pages worth of information. With the U.S. Department of Labor, there are 12 questions to answer, five of which are optional. You only have to provide three documents: your current license, the banking statement where you want them to send electronic payment, and a confirmation statement that that bank information is in fact correct. That's all you have to do. It doesn't cost you anything. You get credentialed. Once you get credentialed, once you get your own provider portal, there are tutorials. There is a manual. Don't overlook it. Look at
Read
the
it.
read it. It says billing tutorial for providers. It says billing tutorial authorization for providers. What more do you want? It's right there.
Kind of like
And
workers' comp for dummies, huh?
that's what it is. That's what it is. And then the next question I always get is, well, where do we get these patients? And I say to them, you realize that the federal government is probably one of the largest
The largest
employers
employers, yeah, everywhere.
everywhere. And they'll say, well, who is the federal government? I said, see that postman who just fell off the truck? That's a federal employee. The federal employees are the postal workers, the TSA workers, federal prison guards, um, ICE agents now. We're getting that. People who work at federal office buildings. And then the nice U.S. Department of Labor also handles longshore harbor workers, also handles black lung. So they're out there. I don't care what part of the country you're in. Like I'm getting a call tomorrow from a biller out in Las Vegas who said to me, well, we do billing in Guam. Well, I got news for you. The federal government
We
handles
got people there.
billing.
Yeah.
They're there. Okay. They're there. Your job is to go out and do it. And then you have to, and this is what I've done already. I had to go with Cairo in Brooklyn and actually go with him to the local post office to talk to the postmaster and say, sir, so and so, Dr. So and so here is an accredited U.S. Department of Labor medical provider. Therefore, we just want you to know that he's available to your employees when and if they're injured. That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. And from that particular introduction, this guy's getting maybe one or two a month. And that's fantastic. As far as I'm concerned, that's how you do it. You have to
No
market
doubt about
yourself.
it. I am trying to pull up something here that, again, I was doing in preparation of this because I thought it was just an unbelievable number. and I'm having a hard time finding it was something like there's 78,000 federal workers' comp cases filed, and I don't know if that was in a year or that sounds low when you consider the millions of people that work for the government, but there's a ton of them out there, and the bottom line is, you've got every doctor's got patients that are federal employees and, hopefully they have good health insurance, but just keep in mind that, it makes no sense for the patient to be coming to you as a chiropractor for a problem, have a workers' comp injury, and then have to go somewhere else.
That's right.
You ought to be taking care of these folks yourself. Well, David, I understand from the email that you sent in initially to us that you had an offer or a uh, for our docs that are listening today. You want to share that?
Yes, I have. I have basically two offers for your docs who are already accredited with the U.S. Department of Labor. If in fact they've been using a fee schedule other than the U.S. Department of Labor, we can offer a free review of their billing. And that we're not doing anything HIPAA violating or anything like that. Just tell us where you are, your zip code, tell us what the procedure is, tell us what you've been charging for it. We'll get back to you within 24 hours and let you know, doctor, you're entitled to more. Or doctor, you've reached the maximum. You can't get any more. This is what the Department of Labor would pay. Then, as far as becoming involved with our firm, if they would want us to do the credentialing and the billing, whatever, we're offering a fee at this point of $200. That's it, one-time fee. And what we do is we'll get you credentialed, we'll get your billing set up, and if you want us to bill, fine. If not, we'll show you how to bill. I mean, it's not that difficult. But if you want us to do the credentialing and set everything up, our normal fee is $400. With Chiro Help, we'll drop it down to $200. One-time
Well,
fee. That's it.
that's awesome, and I will tell you, I have learned an awful lot today, and I want to share one other tidbit with you. When you're talking about the doctors have got to know what that fee schedule is, and they can look it up very easily. Um, because we've got so many docs over the years, about 7,000 of them have been in our network at some point or another, and so I know what people are charging. And David, I pulled a group of 10 clinics out of Texas a few years back, and I and I literally put them in a column, a spreadsheet, and I put what they were charging for their E&M codes, for their manipulation codes, therapy, rehab, and X-ray. You'll believe this, but a lot of people won't. 100% of the clinics that we surveyed in Texas, which has a published workers' comp fee schedule, were not even charging what workers' comp allowed. 70 some odd percent of them were not billing what was allowed on therapy and rehab, and about 50% on X-ray. And so doctors, I hear us bitching and moaning and complaining, hey, we need to be paid better. We need to pay better. Guess what? You need to bill better. You need to
That's
bill
right.
accurate numbers and bill what's actually allowable. And you will literally increase your pay in 30 days if you just start charging what the insurance companies think you're worth. And again, that's something we help doctors with as well. We will never, ever tell you what to charge, but we want you to know your numbers, know what your overhead is, make sure that if you are offering discounts, do it compliantly through the DMPO, and life will be good. It'll be a hell of a lot better if you're getting paid more for doing the same work you're already doing.
And I'm going to add to that. Um, the way the U.S. Department of Labor does its billing or has its billing protocol, and I had to actually physically show the doctors through an overhead from the Department of Labor's website. When a patient walks in your office, like I've got chiros who just send me their bills and just send me the procedures, and I say to them, wait a minute, didn't that patient walk into your office? Didn't you have an office visit? Oh, yes. Then why didn't you charge for it? And they'll say, well, we can't do that because New York State or such and such a state doesn't allow office visits
That's
for chiro.
manipulation.
And I say to them, this is the U.S. Department of Labor.
Different
You're
rules.
entitled to an office visit plus your procedures. That makes a huge difference. And all of a sudden they'll say, wait a minute, you mean to tell me? I said, yes, I mean to tell you.
Well, that's a
Every time.
common complaint we see in all the chat rooms is, I saw a new patient. I did an exam. I did all these services, but I also did an adjustment. Now they're telling me they're not going to pay one or the other because they bundle them and wrap them together. So that great information, David. Just very very eye opening for me. And I've been around the block or two, and I just could not crack that workers' comp nut. And I think it's a wonderful service that you're offering. Well, listen, I got a couple of just for fun questions. Who's your
Right
hero
ahead.
and why?
Excuse me?
Who's your hero and why?
Who's my hero?
Yeah,
Really? General George Patton.
that's a pretty good one. After 70 some odd episodes, I have never had George Patton. Do you have a military background?
No, but I have. I'm very interested in history. My dad, God rest his soul, was a prisoner of war. He was captured at Anzio. Um, During my sophomore year, and you could see behind me Notre Dame. I'm a graduate of Notre Dame. Um, I spent my sophomore year in France, and I had the opportunity to go to Normandy, and I saw Normandy up front, and I saw where the troops were and things like that. And
Life changing.
I mean, I watch that movie once a month, and I'm there with George C. Scott right in the tank.
Yeah, rare character for sure. What's the worst job you ever had?
The worst job I ever had. Ah, boy. That's hard to say because I've been lucky. I've been very lucky. Um, I've
You
taught.
can just say I haven't had it yet. So there you
I
go.
haven't. No, that's true. I haven't had it yet. I can't think of one, except maybe KP when I was in the army.
Yeah, that can't be good. And one last question: what talent do you have that most people don't know about?
Pretty good handicapper, sports handicapper.
Ah, you know the numbers, huh?
I know the spreads.
There you go. Well, doctors, if you're offering discounts of any kind, make sure you're not violating state or federal rules on dual fee schedules, inducements, or anti kickback laws. The fines are no joke. Our profitable discount strategy keeps your discounts fully compliant and profitable. It starts with a free, no obligation call to see if we can help you, just like we have thousands of other doctors nationwide. Many have seen a 20% increase in their revenue and a 50% increase in retention with patients that are members of ChiroHealth. For 18 years now, over 7,000 chiropractors have helped over 4.3 million patient family members get affordable care through ChiroHealth USA. Revenue, better retention, and peace of mind. Call us at 888-719-9990 or visit CHUSA, that's CHUSA.com, to see why ChiroHealth USA is the network that works for chiropractic and you. Again, thanks so much, David. I learned a lot today. I hope all the doctors did.
Thank you, doctor. Have a pleasant
Absolutely.
day.
Great. Everybody make it a great day.